Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. We're going to wait just a few more seconds while everyone joins. So just bear with us and we'll begin shortly. Thank you. For those of you joining, we are still having attendees come on, so just bear with us and we will get started momentarily. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar will focus on earning your CFP certification, managing a family, and working. Three pretty monumental tasks. My name is Dawn Harris. I'm the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the Center for Financial Planning, part of the CFP board. I have been with the organization since April and am very, very excited to be part of this team. My role at the center is really focusing on identifying, developing, and implementing key diversity, equity, and initiatives across the entity, with the primary focus of developing and increasing the number of diverse and female entrants into the CFP certification. Today's session will really give you a lot of tips and tricks about how to really successfully manage and navigate, again, achieving your certification, managing your family, as well as working. I will, before I introduce our moderator, direct your attention to the Q&A function. That is where you can pose questions at the end of the discussion, not the chat. So please, if you do have a question, submit it through the Q&A function. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jocelyn Wright. She will be serving as our webinar facilitator today. She is a special advisor on gender equity for the CFP board, and we're very happy to have her as part of the team. At this time, I'll turn it over to Jocelyn.
Thanks, Dawn. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Again, I am Jocelyn Wright. I am the special advisor on gender diversity for the CFP Board Center for Financial Planning. I won't read my bio. The information is listed there for you to see. I am very excited for our webinar today. Part of my role as the special advisor on gender diversity is working closely with several of the center's initiatives on diversity and inclusion, including our WIN Council and our WIN Advocates program. Today, I'll be moderating the session, and I'll introduce each of our panelists. But first, I want to make sure, again, to reiterate what Dawn said earlier, is that if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A feature on the screen, and then we will have time at the end to answer as many of the questions as we can. And if for some reason that we do not, we'll provide information on how to submit questions for answering after today's session. So to start, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, who is one of our WIN Advocate volunteers, Erin Voisin. She is a CFP professional. And Erin, if you would please take a minute to introduce yourself to our attendees today.
All right, let's say good morning. It's morning for me, good afternoon for probably many of you. Super excited to be here. I am the managing director here at EP Wealth. I oversee our wealth management service offering. So that encompasses the financial planning team, our tax team, estate team, and our retirement plan services team. So really excited. It's a big team. It's about 30 people that I oversee at this point. As well as, like Jocelyn mentioned, a huge advocate for the CFP. I was the former chairwoman for our women's initiative here at EP Wealth, and have now since been added as a board member for the CFP Win Council, which has been great. And then internally within EP, I also oversee our internship program, as well as our financial literacy initiative. So as you can tell, I like to be involved in lots of things and keep busy, but while managing a family and having some form of work-life presence, I will say. So excited to be here and share my thoughts with the group.
Thanks, Erin. So happy that you could join us today. Next, I'd like to have Dennis Markway, who is also a WIN advocate. Introduce yourself, please, to the audience.
Sure. Good afternoon. This is Dennis Markway. I'm the principal owner and founder of Iron Horse Wealth Management, located in Des Moines, Iowa, fee-only financial planning business. I have been a long-time volunteer with CFP board in a number of different capacity. But what's very near and dear to my heart is working with the WIN initiative to change the complexion of what our profession looks like. To bring more women to the profession, more diverse voices, to make sure that the population of financial planners looks a lot like the population of the United States, which it unfortunately currently does not now. I've been a longtime volunteer with the Disciplinary and Ethics Commission as well, which is a lot of fun to get involved with. But very passionate about the profession of financial planning. But beyond that, I am also a dad of 2 daughters, and I want to leave this profession better than how I found it for them, potentially. So, but very excited to be here and participate in the discussion today.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And we had an opportunity to chat a little bit before we started the webinar. So I know that you are a proud girl dad. So thank you so much for volunteering with the Advocates Program. Lastly, I would like to introduce our third panelist, Lauren Oshman. And before I have Lauren introduce herself, I want to just say a few words. Lauren and I met via email about probably 2.5 years ago. And one of the questions that she had is, we were just talking through what are some of the things that we might be able to do to help women who are, either have children or about to have children, and navigating the maternity leave process, how to effectively deal with clients, with your manager if you work at a firm. And with everything that was going on with the pandemic, we sort of lost touch. And then when the idea of this webinar came up again, I told the team, I need to reach out to Lauren because she's the one that planted the seed. And I want to make sure that we invite her and hopefully she is able to participate. And so I reached out to her to tell her that we were having this session and invite her as well. And lo and behold, she said, Jocelyn, I'm expecting and I am due, right around the time of the session. So thank goodness that, she has not had the baby yet, probably later this week. But Lauren is here to join us and give her insight and tips as well on how she has been able to navigate this process. So Lauren, if you would please take a few minutes to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to be here. So I am just days away from baby number 3. And I think, Jocelyn, you and I met, I only had 1. So it's been quite a last few years. So I am with Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors. It's a firm that I co-founded with a wonderful group of partners almost 4 years ago now. I'm in Nashville. We do have several offices located throughout the country, a team of around 20 that I serve as the director of our advisory teams. So I do a lot of coaching with our advisors. I manage all of our lead advisors. I also have my own practice that I built from the ground up and continue to manage, and a team of paraplanners and client service administrators that help me manage my own clients. So that's that's what I do at work. At home, I have 2 daughters, a almost 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and I'm expecting daughter number 3 any day. The reason I connected with, actually, it was Jocelyn's predecessor, Kathleen McQuiggan, who I initially connected with, because I came back to work after having my first daughter, and I was so overwhelmed with how much more challenging it was to just manage everything and stay focused. I was actually the only female advisor of about 40 advisors at the firm I was at the time, and I didn't have anyone to help me with that and to kind of guide me through that. And so Kathleen was so generous to put me in touch with an amazing female advisor that I still touch base with regularly to this day and take advice from. She has 3 children as well. And so just really excited to be here and share some wisdom, hear from Erin and Dennis, what they have to share, as all of you kind of are navigating the same thing that we are in a profession that doesn't necessarily have the best example, at least not at all firms, in terms of how to do that.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. And we hope to, be part of that process, that, first ripple in the water to help change that and expand the conversation. So before we get into our questions, one of the things that we asked each of the panelists to do was to provide their top tips, things to keep in mind as they were going through the certification process, managing family and work. And I would like for each of the panelists to go through and share your tips with the audience today. Erin, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. So I'll talk about this sort of as myself going through it, and then now as a manager watching, my planning team alone is 20-some people. And so I've watched a lot of people go through this process. And I tell everyone is give yourself that day off. Every study plan I've ever looked at for the CFP allows you a day to just decompress, hang out with family and friends, and to really just not think about charts and graphs and calculations and limits and all that fun stuff. So give yourself that day. It will be okay. Be vocal about the time commitment with those around you. I tell all my team members, your life is going to be terrible for 3 months. Let's just be honest. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's really going to be tough, but it's all going to be worth it. And you have to be able to talk to friends, family, significant others, your children about that as well. I think for having your kids understand why mommy or daddy might not be available to play every weekend morning like they used to. And it's for a short amount of time. It's just to get something that's going to be really impactful and powerful in this industry. And I think the other part is making sure to break up your studying in chunks. I know everyone studies a little differently. For myself personally, I'm not someone that can sit for 6 hours and just read and study material. I found it better to do a little bit in the morning, a little bit at lunch, and then a little bit in the afternoon. And I found that when I did that, I felt like I had more of an evening. I wasn't just thinking all day at work, like, oh, I have 4 hours of studying ahead of me. It was like, no, I only have 2 hours left because I already got some done. And especially if you have families, doing it around bedtime is sort of a necessity to make sure that you can still have that time with your significant others and your children. Since the CFP, I've done several other designations and gotten my master's, all while having kids, and somehow I've made it through. But I think a lot of that is just really working with not only my management team to make sure that they were supportive, which they 100% were, but also with my family and support system to make sure that they were. So those would be my top tips.
Great tips. Thanks, Erin. And I think it's important, your first point about giving yourself that off day. It's like if you have a fitness routine, they always tell you to factor in that rest day. So you have to make sure that you do that for yourself, and definitely being vocal, letting people know what you're doing so that they can be supportive of you during that process. So thank you so much. Next, we'll have Dennis, if you would share your tips, please.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I want to say that the decision to put myself through the suffering that it took to qualify and sit for the exam was one of the wisest decisions I ever made. Was absolutely formative for everything else. But also have to say that when I told my wife that I was going to be speaking today, she laughed at me because she said, you know what, it was because you had a great team around you. So that's going to kind of be peppered in throughout what I say here. So I am so fortunate to have an understanding, supportive spouse and family to have gone through that process. But in order to make that a little bit easier, I encourage, what I did, and I encourage this of my associates that are working toward their CFP at this point in time, to get creative with your time. Especially as a parent, there are so many polls and demands and competing goals and objectives that are just peppering your life at that point in time. So, one of the things that I did when I was first starting to study for the exam was, well, there were those down times when, when it was my job to take care of the kids, and in particular with our first daughter, who wasn't particularly healthy when she was first born. So we had to feed her with a syringe. So it was, a grueling feeding schedule, every 45 minutes, because her little tummy would get empty and she needed to be fed. But when she got a little bit bigger, I'd be sitting there with a book in one hand, bottle in the other, daughter in the nook of my arm to read and study that way. And while she was eating or napping, I was studying at 5 a.m. But then also, be really disciplined with your time. If you make those decisions that inside of your schedule, that these are going to be the times that you're going to study, just stick to it. Almost like, as mentioned earlier with working out, I run 5 miles in the morning. I'm disciplined with the time that I get up in the morning. I'm disciplined with what I'm going to do. And I was disciplined when I was studying for the CFP exam. And one of the great ways was just, I quit going to lunch with friends and colleagues or clients or anything like that. I would study over the lunch hour every day and blaze through an amazing amount of information during that time frame. Wasn't real popular with my colleagues at the time because they would have preferred to go out for lunch, but it was a sacrifice that I was willing to make. And talking about the sacrifices. So in the process while raising a family, and as I mentioned, I have 2 daughters, and when I was taking the kind of a CFP prep course to get started for the exam, I missed my wife's birthday and I think that was our 10th anniversary. While at the College for Financial Planning's prep course in Denver. So here I was flitted away at a class studying, preparing for this, and she was at home with our little one at that point in time. But I made sure to tie in, what was the reward for getting this done, and how do I reward not just myself, but the whole family. So I've really integrated that into all of my personal and business goals, but definitely it was important with the sacrifice that you're making, the commitment that you're making for suffering through studying for the exam and prepping for it, to make sure that that they're involved in some of those rewards too. So I knew that if I successfully completed the CFP exam, there was going to be a family vacation on the backside of that, and it was a week and a half in Costa Rica, sitting on a beach, and just enjoying that time with family to make up for some of that missed time along the way. So absolutely 1,000% integrate your family members in some of those goals. It makes it a lot more palatable along the way.
Great, thanks, Dennis. And certainly I hope that you made it up to your wife for missing your wedding anniversary as well as her birthday. And I'm sure one of the rewards was passing the CFP exam. So she knows that the time was well spent.
She was delightfully classy and never brings it up. So.
But you remember. Next, we'll have Lauren, if you would share your tips, please.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I would say, first off, and this is, Erin alluded to the fact that everyone manages themselves a little bit differently. Everyone studies a little bit differently. So this these are my best tips, but you have to figure out what works for you. For me, scheduling time is critical for anything that I want to accomplish. If it's on my calendar, it is a rigid appointment that I am keeping with, whether that be with myself or with someone else, right? So study time for a designation, course material that you have to get through, that's an appointment on the calendar. And if it's on the calendar, it's non-negotiable, and I have to have childcare. So if that's in the evening, that means I have to be on the same page with my husband. We've actually done this for years. I have one evening a week that, without, quote, having to ask permission or anything like that, one evening a week I get to work. That may be after hours client meetings that I have to do. That may be studying that needs to get done. That may be work that didn't get done during the week. But during that evening, he's in charge of the kids. He's in charge of dinner. And that way I know that I have that time and I don't have to worry about any of those things. So I would say schedule in the time you need, make sure that you have childcare covered, and make sure that you're communicating with your partner. As Erin said, I mean, this is a rigorous process, but it's not forever. It's a season. So make sure that everyone's on the same page, that this is a season and this is something that we need to get through. I like telling my kids what I'm doing and why, right? So I don't think it's bad if my 4-year-old knows that I'm working toward a professional goal. In fact, she likes to imagine that she is a financial advisor for princesses, and she has great stories to tell when she returns from meetings at their castles. If anyone's out there looking for a niche, decent idea. But I don't think it's bad that they be involved in knowing what your professional ambitions are and knowing that what you're doing to achieve those, and that takes hard work. The second thing, and I've talked to, dozens of moms probably over the last few years who are struggling with trying to get through the coursework, trying to, remember and retain so much information for a comprehensive exam while working full time and managing their kids. I really suggest think about the coursework as phase 1, think about the exam prep as phase 2. So go through your course program, do the work that you need to pass the exams, right? Understand that information, but you don't have to know everything you learn in your courses for the exam. They don't test everything that you learn in your courses. So I highly recommend finish your coursework, celebrate that. That in itself is a win. Then move on to phase 2, which is prepare for the exam. Dennis talked about the off-site review course. I 1,000% recommend an off-site review course. Get yourself on a plane or get in your car, drive to a hotel somewhere without your family, without your colleagues, no one to bug you, and spend that time 110% immersed in the material that you have to learn or remember, recall, be able to work out for the exam, and just focus on passing the exam during that period of time. Same thing when you come back. I took a week off personally before the exam, I think like 4 days. And I actually used like a study room at the library because if I went to the office, people would bug me. If I stayed home, people would bug me. I was like, I need to be away from everyone and be in control of my time because I got to pass this test, right? So I would just encourage you to, think about a location that's going to set you up for success. For some people, a coffee shop would work. For me, people are distracting, so I needed to get away from people. And then finally, I would say, give yourself grace. Someone told me years ago, everything on your plate, everything on your to-do list is either a glass ball or it's a rubber ball. And if it's a rubber ball and you drop it, it will bounce and you can pick it back up later. If it's a glass ball and you drop it, it will break. I think you can think about your to-do list this way. I think you can also think about career goals and timelines this way, right? If the CFP is the next thing that you need to advance in your career at your firm, that may be more important to stick to a certain timeline than if it's something that you're wanting to achieve for yourself, but that's not external pressure, right? It's not holding you back from that next step. Then figure out what you can manage in terms of study time and kind of allocation of resources and build your timeline off of that. So I would just encourage you to, you don't have to do everything at once. Figure out what you need to do to accomplish what you want to accomplish, and then give yourself grace to not do the things in such a tight timeline that maybe don't necessarily have to be done that way.
Great, thanks, Lauren. And I think your last point about giving yourself grace is so important. You know, that's certainly something that many of us have reinforced over the past year or so with everything going on. So that's really important. Now, I'd like for us to jump into some of the questions that we've received in advance of today's webinar. So we'll take a few of these questions and then we'll go into the Q&A that the attendees have submitted. So again, if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. So the first question is, what sort of unique stresses does the profession put on a marriage and family? And
I'll jump in there to start.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, when Lauren was talking about how, you know, her and her husband have that sort of unofficial agreement that you have that one night a week, I think that really stresses this industry. It really is not a 9-to-5 job. I think we all know that. I think we know that the market starts earlier than that. Clients, you know, want questions answered at all different times. And so I think one of the stresses is that you do sort of feel like you're always on. And so that's why I said at the beginning, you know, making sure that I have work-life presence. I'm of the belief that balance is just kind of hard given this industry. So making sure that I can turn it on at work and then turn it off and be present at home. And it's challenging in this industry just because of what we do and the client expectations and wanting to give a truly good client experience. So I think it goes back to making sure that your partner and your children are just aware of that, hey, there might be those nights where mommy or daddy has to work a little later or answer a few emails. You know, it's not like we're ignoring you, it's just the nature of this job. But I think it has made it somewhat of a stressor, but something that is completely achievable. And I will say that as a mom and overseeing what I do, that I never have felt that I don't have the work-life presence that I want.
Thanks, Erin. And I appreciate how you specifically say you're intentional about the presence versus the balance. That's something we talked about earlier. You know, that balance is a fleeting goal. So I like how you termed it work-life presence. Does anyone else want to add to that answer at all before we go into the next question?
I'd say just to echo maybe something Lauren said a little earlier about you know, the glass and the rubber balls. I mean, just to be very mindful of that, because there are so many, you know, competing objectives that we may have. So it leads to, you know, the potential for you know, missed events with kids or our family and things like that. But again, making sure that you know which one of those balls that you're juggling in the air, that if you drop it, it's going to bounce and it'll be just fine. And those things that are going to be glass, that, you know, you just can't drop those things. So case in point, you know, the thing that I get to go to immediately after our presentation today is my 5th grader gets to graduate from 5th grade and go on to middle school. So you know, one of the great things about this profession too is there's the opportunity for some time freedom, but I mean, you have to be disciplined. You have to stick to your schedule.
Great, and congratulations, Dennis. Next question, what kind of support did you receive and what are you doing for individuals in your firm now? If you would explain, you know, asking your employer for how to ask your employer for support.
I'm happy to, I'll talk as kind of a manager because
Please.
I have 5 team members taking the CFP this year. I've had a lot of team members take it over the years. And I always think about the support and grace that I was given as I studied, and have always wanted to, you know, share that with others. As a firm, we allow everyone 3 days prior to the exam to take off to study, as well as the day of. Because my department, specifically on the planning side, like the CFP is sort of like the crux we needed. It's what we're looked at for. I give everyone a week off prior, so no vacation time, no sick time, do what you got to do to study. I also modify work schedules. So one of the things I ask everyone in their monthly check-in as they're leading up for it is, what is your study habits? How do you study? Are you better in the morning, at night? And then we move their work schedule to accommodate that. And the great part about my overall team is everyone has been there. They know what the CFP is like. So they have no problem jumping in to help take work off each other's plate to make sure that you're not going home thinking about tasks. So I think it's super important to just have that conversation with your respective manager, because as a manager, I know how valuable that designation is going to be. So I want to help you succeed and get it done. And there's questions, and I'm happy to answer it later. I was a 2-time test taker. So I get the thought of wanting to pass it the first time. So as a manager, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you, on the balance side of it, to make sure that it happens.
Great. Appreciate that, Lauren.
I love hearing you say, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, Lauren, did you have something?
Yeah, I love hearing you say that, Erin, because when I was going through the process, honestly, I had very little support. My firm didn't require the CFP. It was something that I wanted to do because I appreciated the credibility of the designation, and I'm so glad that I did it. But I really didn't have that support, and there were not a lot of people who had gone through that process either to really understand what it took. And so at our firm, I really try to take the support I wish I would have had and give that to our team members. And I always encourage people, if you're going, I think your supervisor wants to help you and wants to see you succeed. And generally speaking, probably recognizes that the CFP designation is really going to elevate your ability within the team, your presence with clients, your future in the industry. And so if there's something that's not working, go to them not just with the issue, but with a potential solution, right? So if they don't have all of the experience that Erin has, having helped so many team members through this process before, you're not just going to them saying, hey, this isn't working. You're going to them and saying, hey, here's where I'm struggling. Here's what I think might help. Can we work together to find a solution? On the supervisor side, I always appreciate that so much more. And I'm so much more willing. I want to help everyone succeed. But I love when people come to me and they say, hey, here's what I think I need. Can you help me get there? So I would encourage that mentality. I think that works really well.
Well, these gray hairs right here came from studying and taking the CFP exam. So, given the difference in vintage between myself and Erin and Lauren, I really grew up in the insurance brokerage model where there also wasn't a whole lot of support. It was self-study. It was paying my own way through for most of it. And I just don't feel that develops the best financial professionals to have it happen that way. So I think as with both of my co-presenters here, really trying to take a much more enlightened approach where a lot more support, a lot more guidance, both financially, time off, questions, time dedicated during the day for people to get their studying done. We've got 2 people who are working toward their CFP right now. And I just think that that's so very critical that leaders are taking that time out and making sure that they're focused on making sure that as much development can take place as possible, because it is a real challenge going back to those times, and I'm glad I never had to take it more than once, and I'm hoping that none of my associates have to either. So.
Well, Dennis, you make a good point just about the different, there are different course programs out there. It's not a one size fits all. And so if you're someone, maybe someone else at your firm did a self-study, maybe that doesn't work for you. Maybe you need something where you have to show up live somewhere once a week, or you have to, have that virtual accountability in an actual virtual classroom. There are all kinds of different programs out there. And so I would encourage you to know yourself. And if what you're doing isn't working because you keep missing your milestones, maybe revisit the setup that you chose and, go to your firm and say, hey, maybe, I need to do this program because it's going to set me up for better success. It's not a one size fits all.
How do you learn the best way, and how do we make sure that we can tailor that experience to make sure that it dovetails best with how they're able to do so. So because again, just like Lauren and Aaron and everyone else on the call here today, we all want people to be successful with this, because I know it's been life-changing for me. I want to see it be life-changing for the people that I'm privileged to work with.
Great. The next question is sort of a combination of a couple of questions, one that was in the Q&A as well. What are some of the common mistakes that candidates make when allocating their time for studying and getting through the material, and also any concerns that candidates would have if they're taking the exam for a second time?
As someone who took it twice, I will tell you I did everything wrong the first time. I tell all my team members when I think back to my first test taking experience, I'm like, I didn't follow anyone's advice. I just thought I had been in the industry at this point for almost 6 years. I was doing planning. I was in client meetings. I was giving advice. I did not give the CFP the respect that it needed. And I would go into my classes and my review courses with my work laptop. And I'd be sitting there responding to emails, working on plans while like half listening. I wasn't studying appropriately. And it was really just because I thought I'm doing this as my job, like this test should be no problem. And boy, did I get knocked out of my butt when I did not pass. And I remember like really thinking and having that hard look at myself, like, is this the career I'm meant to have? Like, I do this, people take my advice, and I can't pass this test. And I was not someone who jumped into it the 3 months later and just took it again. I actually gave myself about 1.5 years, and it was I was at a new firm actually at this point, and it was another colleague who was taking it, who convinced me to do it so we'd have accountability partners. And I will tell you, I went in that second time and I followed every single thing that my instructor said to a T. Like, followed that study plan, stuck to it, did not deviate whatsoever, and passed. But I will tell you, like, having to take that a second time and give up 3 more months of my life is something that I do not wish on anyone. So for all those going through it a second time or a third or a fourth, you can do it. Just stick to it. And you are meant to be in the profession. If this is what you want to do not let this test dissuade you from that, because it is a test. And you will get through it and you will have a great career.
Thanks, I appreciate you sharing that. Another question is relating to the review course. When would you say is an ideal time to take the review course, and how did you select which course you took for the exam prep?
I would recommend taking the review course as in close as proximity to the exam as possible. You know, maybe with a few weeks in between the prep course and the exam itself. I wouldn't let too much time tarry there. So, you know, which, I mean, is certainly dependent upon, you know, probably somewhat upon your employer and what's available and what's budgetable in terms of an expense along the way. But I thought the CFP prep course that I took absolutely saved me for the exam itself. I would not have been successful without it. Especially given, you know, I'm a career changer. So I was a college professor to start things off, and non-business major. I took one business class in college, and it was my worst grade. I can't believe I'm admitting that to so many people. How did I end up here then? Who knows? But you know, certainly carry a huge passion for the profession, and really use the building blocks for the CFP and then that prep course to really you know, deliver the level of competence that I needed to deliver services to clients effectively. effectively. But also that exam prep really helps with, I think, one of the big issues for a lot of people entering the exams. And I just talked to one of my associates about this yesterday. Confidence. To have confidence writing at an all-time high going into that. So, and I think those prep courses can help you immensely with it.
On average, how long were each of you in practice prior to taking the exam?
I think I was similar. Erin mentioned she had 6 years of experience. I think I was similar in that, maybe 5 or 6. And I started in the industry right out of college.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was roughly 3 years having advised clients at the point in time that I sat for the exam. So I hadn't learned too many bad habits yet. And really, you know, and I do think that was helpful for me to really have, you know, the CFP board's methodologies for looking at things as pretty fresh in my head. You know, not having too many other fingerprints from other firms on my brain at that point in time.
Okay. And you, Erin?
So yeah, I was about 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
And I will share too, like one of the questions that was in the Q&A was about like, should you have more work experience before taking it? And I know it's really great that a lot of college programs now offer the courses and you can graduate and take the exam, but then you don't have the work experience. I actually started in this industry as an intern. So as I mentioned, I oversee our intern program. I'm really big on that. And I look to those planning programs because I know that you're going to need that work experience and how terrible it is to go study, take an exam, and then not be able to use those letters that you work so hard for. And I will share that a team member he's taking it in July. When he joined me a little over a year ago, he had taken it and failed the first time. But all he had was 3 months in the industry. And so when he joined, he goes, okay, I can take it again in November if you want me to. And I told him no. I said, I think I want you to work, get some more experience, learn planning a little bit more, and then take it. So now a year later, he's actually going to sit for it. And it helps because now he has the experience requirement. So if he passes, he can actually use the exam, you know, the designation itself. So while I think if you're doing a course program, to take it while it's all fresh is super important. But I do really emphasize that I think the work experience is helpful, especially now that the exam is very job focused.
I know one of the best pieces of advice that my mentor gave me when I first started was to work and then go and, you know, study and take the exam, because I wanted, you know, just coming in, I had just completed my MBA 2 years before. And so I was ready to go in and of course, get all the credentials that I could at the time. But she recommended, you know, work. And it was so helpful because when I went into the classes, I was able to apply real life situations for cases that I was either working on or, you know, other advisors that I knew to the coursework. So I think that helped. And, you know, to a point that Lauren mentioned earlier, and Dennis and Erin, you may have said the same thing, but it's important that you know yourself, like what type of student are you? How best do you learn? I know for me, having that practical application to the concepts was very helpful, you know, going through even, you know, with a degree in finance.
Well, there are multiple questions on the exam that are looking for the best of the 4 choices when more than one of them may be correct. And I think that's where the work experience really makes the difference, because if you have the textbook knowledge, but you haven't actually built plans, advised clients, it's harder to figure out that best answer consistent with the course material and with working with clients. So I would totally echo that. I think the applicability, I think it helps to have some work experience.
Yeah, the know thyself is incredibly important to just, you know, what trips you up in an exam setting. You know, I happen to be blessed with, exams don't stress me out at all. So, normally I'll be the one who is laughing in the middle of a test because there's some outlandish answer to a question that can't possibly be right. But at the same time, to have that confidence going in, I think is critical. To know some of those areas that might trip you up, like the always, never, the negatives that are inside of questions. I mean, I was a paper pencil exam, so I went through the exam on exam day, and whenever there's a question with one of those key words in it, I circled it. So I knew if I went back that that was one of those items, because I just took tons of practice tests, and I found that consistently, my brain would run ahead of where it was supposed to go, and I wouldn't pay attention to those words. So really, to slow down and focus on those kinds of things, and know what trips you up along the way is important. So. But also not to fret about some of those things. Statistically, there's going to be one question on a certain topic. If you just can't get that crammed inside your brain, okay, I gave up that one question. I'm not going to get 100% on the exam this time. So.
And I think that's also the importance of the review courses. They help you become a better test taker in what types of things to be mindful of. Dennis, like you mentioned, when you see the nevers and the always, those are kind of red flags that you should be mindful of. Another question deviates a little bit in terms of the exam prep, but it talks about how do you delegate to your assistant during your studying? And what did you delegate?
I mean, I think for us, like as a team, knowing that someone is taking the test, like we start about 3 weeks before they're going to be out for that first, that full week. And again, someone might take vacation for supplemental time, but we really start to just pull work off their plate and have them almost work in the background so that they really are as there's as little stress as possible. And again, because we have 20 team members surrounding them who've gone through the CFP, they're happy to kind of take on that work. And I will say personally, as I took several other tests, post CFP, again, it's just being vocal and just making sure that people understand. And in this profession, they know that anything you're working on, whether it be the CFP or another designation, it's ultimately going to benefit the firm or your clients. So why not give someone that grace, that freedom to go study and help them out? It benefits truly everyone at the firm. So that's kind of the stance we've taken. So I feel like we are really supportive of people across any department that's taking it. We actually internally every other Wednesday do a CFP coursework training. So we're actually, everyone who's taking the CFP this year and next, whether you're in planning, portfolio management, client service, doesn't matter. You're eligible to come sit in this training and kind of learn from one another. So that's been really helpful too, to kind of give everyone study partners, accountability, but also just to kind of feel like you're not in it alone.
That study group accountability partner is key, I think, for a lot of people. How did you all manage your client reviews while you were studying?
I think I have always been a big believer that setting expectations is key. So whether you tell clients that you're working on a designation or not, I don't think really matters. But I think if you can set expectations, like the firm that I was at the time that I was taking the exam, we did 4 meetings with clients every year. So that year, my clients did not all get 4 meetings. I spaced it out so that we still covered all of the material that we needed to cover for their, quote, quarterly review cycle, but I did it in 3 meetings for the most part. I don't do that anymore. Now I do 2 a year. So I would just space them out, very similar to what I'm doing for my upcoming maternity leave, right? Just setting good expectations with clients about what the time frame is that I expect their meetings to be for the year, and then making sure that they know that if something comes up, they can absolutely call in, and if I'm not available to help them, we'll find them someone who can. So I would just adjust and just make sure to communicate. I think when people have good expectations, generally they're pretty receptive to that.
Excellent, thanks.
Yeah, you know, at the point in time that I took the CFP exam, I did not have an assistant. There was nobody for me to delegate responsibilities to, so it was abject suffering. So now at the firm now, you know, I wish I had enough people taking the exam that we could have an exam group to study together. I think that's a lovely idea. But I guess as things run at my firm, you know, there's a saying, and I'll use a PC version of it, but you know, stuff rolls downhill. Well, during the point in time where you know, my crew members are studying and taking the exam, stuff rolls uphill. So it's all hands on deck to make sure that there's the time freedom, the mental capacity, the you know, the stress release. Otherwise, so they can really be focused on taking the exam. So so not afraid to roll up my sleeves to take work off of other people's plate, and if that means putting in some extra hours and sacrificing some of my time to make sure that they're successful, that's what I think a good leader should do.
And again, I would stress, if you're working in an environment where maybe you don't have leaders that have the example of going through the test themselves to understand how rigorous it really is, so they're not proactively offering maybe to take that work from you, like Dennis and Aaron are describing, because I'm the same way, but I've been through it. Again, go to them and tell them where you're at, tell them what you need, right? I think they want to help you succeed. And so if you say, hey, I just can't manage this right now, here's a solution I have in mind, have that conversation. You won't know if you don't ask.
So true. Dennis, I'm going to pose this question to you. It's, as a career changer, do you recommend quitting your job, your day job, to get the required experience in the time frame post passing the CFP exam or doing the coursework?
I think that's a loaded question. That's a tough one. So as a career changer, because really I started my career backwards. So so really was a teacher first, then worked for financial services companies both domestically and internationally. And I think it was really you know, transformative when I left kind of the nest of corporate America and made the jump into getting that actual experience planning. Was far more beneficial. It was stepping completely off the ledge, you know, going from a $250,000 a year job to an eat what you can kill environment, you know, where my starting salary and stipend was a big zero. So I don't think that that people have to do it that way anymore. I know there's a lot of progressive firms out there like mine, and I would suspect with my peers where it's a salaried role, not a you know, exclusively what you can deliver to the firm or anything like that. And I just think that looking for that right kind of fit for an organization. Where you're bringing great skill sets and mindsets to the table, you know, I think you can have the best of both worlds with that. So, but you might have to hunt and peck because I think there's certainly a wider swath of jobs that are available out there that may not have any kind of a base tied to it. That just makes it hard to do. But you know, fortunately, I think that the mindset of our profession is changing. And I think that a lot of that comes from, you know, from the profession looking at the fact that we need to change, that we need to make sure that the profession is you know, palatable to people of all walks of life. So.
We have about 5 minutes left. I think we can probably get to about one or two more questions. One is, do you restrict the number of evening or weekend client appointments? If so, how do you handle the guilt of restricting work in order to spend time with your family?
It's a good question. Dennis, you were going to say something. You can go first.
I'm really bad at restricting my time. You know, I exist, I'm the humble service provider to my clients. And I feel very passionately about making sure that I'm available at points and times when they're available to meet with me. So if it drags into the evening and things like that, that's fine. Now, as a counterpoint with that, I have my kids in the morning. I always have. My wife goes to work at 5 in the morning, so we kind of have split shifts with how we work. So I had to learn how to do pigtails and ponytails and things like that along the way. And I have that precious, albeit stressful time in the morning when you're trying to get kids ready and fed and the right mindset to go to school. But it's that was kind of the trade-off for me. Now, I do restrict any kind of weekends. It takes some kind of really critical need for me to be working on the weekends, because that is dedicated family time for me. But evenings, my family suffers a little bit. But if there are important things like I'm going to today, which is really meaningful to my daughter Saskia, I'm going to be there, and I'm just going to schedule it off, and that's the way it's going to be.
I was very hesitant. I used to work probably 3 or 4 evenings a week. I was very hesitant initially to restrict that, but every time I would think about the kind of mom that I wanted to be and the kind of presence that I wanted to have with my kids, I wanted to be able to do dinner and I wanted to be able to do bedtime. And so that was where, I started offering less evenings to clients to choose from. Our scheduling's all online, so they choose. And shockingly, I found that when I say that kind of sarcastically, I'm both surprised and not, that as I've restricted my availability for appointments, they've found things that work, right? And every now and again, I do have a client who's like, oh, you only have Tuesday evenings available, and that doesn't work for us for this reason. And if they're a good client, I'm perfectly happy to accommodate them. And so then I may say, okay, great. 2 or 3 weeks from now, like Wednesday's going to be my night, and I'll just book another couple of Wednesday evening meetings if I need to. But I really have just chosen not to feel the guilt for restricting my work availability, because I know what kind of, I love Erin's term, work-life presence. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of work-life presence I want to have, and I don't want to have regret down the line. So I'm willing to be a little bit more intentional and, figure it out as I go. And if something doesn't work, I'll try something different. But that's where I think having other people who have done these things, right, talking to parents who are maybe a few years ahead of you, figure out what's worked for them and try things and find what's going to work for you and make you feel confident about that work-life presence that you're living.
Great, thanks so much. And before we close out, we have a few more minutes left. I'm deviating a little from the script, but if any of you have if each of you would give us sort of closing comments or thoughts for our attendees to take away from this afternoon's presentation. And I'll go backwards, so I'll start with you, Lauren.
Yeah, I think I would say we've talked about some of the challenges that can come with working, managing a family, trying to pursue CFP certification. I would also say on the flip side, I think this can be a great profession for wanting to have that work-life presence, right? Because of just what Dennis mentioned, he's going to take off after this and he's going to go to that 5th grade graduation. We have a lot more, I think, flexibility to juggle the schedule, right? So if I realize that I've not been, I've missed a couple of nights of dinner with my daughters that I would normally have, then I may take Friday afternoon and say, hey, when you wake up from your naps, we're going to do this. Like we're going to have a mommy afternoon. And I have the flexibility to do that. So I would say it's absolutely possible. There's so many amazing parents who are doing it. And I would not just focus on the challenge, but I would also focus on the opportunity. Because I think once you get the CFP certification behind you, this is a great profession to be in if you want to, quote, try to do it all.
Thanks, Lauren. Dennis, any final comments, closing comments?
Yeah, I'm one of those people who gets to tap dance into work every day, because I absolutely adore what I get to do. It doesn't feel like work when it's just so much fun being that touch point for people every single day. which, I mean, for me, you know, renders what the challenge is you know, that unbalanced nature between, you know, absolutely adoring what you do and wanting to make sure that you're present for family members and things like that, and you know, just acknowledge that it's going to be a struggle to do, and you're not going to get it right, and you're going to fail. We all do, and that's okay. You can get to the other side of this. You know, the greater intentionality that you have along the way is going to help. The greater communication that you have is going to help immensely. But you know, certainly having understanding, supportive family members, an understanding and saint-like spouse that I have makes that all so much easier.
Thank you, Dennis. And Erin, please close us out.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say is we focus a lot about the CFP. Once you're done with that test, learning is not over. I think one thing about this profession that everyone needs to realize is you are a forever student of it. And as tax and estate and all the fun legislation that changes on us, you know, yearly, it is what makes the job fun. And I say that because you sort of have to be a forever nerd to be in this profession, because there is always something that you are going to have to be learning to talk to your clients about, that they're going to be asking you about, that they expect you to know. So while the CFP test is over, there's still a lot of learning to do, but it's learning that you're going to enjoy doing at that point. It's going to be very practical to what's going on in your life, your clients' lives. And for all the second time, third, fourth, fifth, you know, test takers out there, you can do it. Keep your head to the ground. Don't let the test psych you out. I actually had a team member who took it all 5 times. And every time he would fail, he would be like, I'm not meant to do this. And I would watch him in client meetings and I would watch him in team meetings. I'm like, you know this. But he would let the test psych him out if he just got hung up on a question. So just put your head down. Know those first 10 questions are pretty much meant to freak you out. Blow past them and move on to question 11. And then, you know, hopefully you all pass the CFP and join us. And as Lauren and Dennis said, a really, really, really good profession for men and women.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. Want to thank our attendees. The questions that you've submitted has been great. For any of the questions that we were not able to get to, we will try our best to respond to you. But if there are any others, please email getcertified2021@cfpboard.org. And we'll take a look and get you some additional information. There are some resources that we have on the final slide as well. And as we close out, a huge thank you and much appreciation to our panelists today, Erin, Dennis, and Lauren. Thank you all so much for what you're doing within the profession to help support new certificates coming in. So we wish you all continued success. And Lauren, best of luck to you on the pending new addition to your family. Thank you all again for attending this afternoon.